So, okay, so what we're talking about today, we'll get into the topic. This is a series of podcasts that was done several years ago. I want to say it was a five-part series on the Dry podcast done by Dr. Peter Attia, where he hosted Dr. Thomas Dayspring. I remember listening to all of them. It was back when I was catching all of Dr. Attia's um, podcast episodes about all kinds of different things. And I'll even go back. It was maybe probably a decade ago that he wrote an article called "The Straight Dope on Cholesterol." And me being a
Mhm.
personal trainer and just learning a little bit about like how the body works and nutrition, this was a revelation in understanding what cholesterol was, what the subfractions were. We had just started doing very simple lipid panels. We were trying to decide like what's important, what are we looking at, what's just noise, what does HDL do, all this stuff. And so I have to say, like when I go back and look at my own, you know feeble knowledge about this topic, Dr. Attia was very influential in helping me kind of understand different things. And so you did such a good job on the conclusion of this episode to say we're not attacking anybody. You're clarifying things in your episode where you went through and you listened to some of those episodes and came back with a few, rebuttals. And we want to start this episode by saying like they got a lot of things right. It's very interesting. It was very technical. They did a great job, and we're not here to try to say like we're just going to poo-poo everything they did in that series. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't think there's any benefit in, just kind of disparaging others and putting others down just for the sake of that, right? But, um, on the other hand, someone with Dr. Atia's reputation and also Dr. Dayspring's reputation, a lot hinges on, the content that they bring forth, right? People like yourself are listening and learning from them, right? And that series that he did, I think, got a lot of attention. There were, at least on the YouTube version, many many views. So people really wanted to know this information. So I think for me, it was when I listened to it, realizing that there were fundamental principles that had been ignored there. That was, I guess, a bit worrisome for me. And the idea wasn't to attack them. It was to just kind of set the record straight, because I think that as much as we talked about cholesterol, I think we've only seen one corner of the cholesterol universe. And we're trying to infer everything about cholesterol from that one corner, right? We're just looking at, one tiny galaxy in the whole universe there. And I think it's dangerous to kind of draw these big mega conclusions based on one corner of the universe.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So you tell the story in your introduction in this episode, but tell us the how this came about. I think somebody wanted you to take a listen to this, and you had kind of put it off. We all know how absolutely slam busy you are all the time. It must have been quite the undertaking, not only to make the episode, but listen to all the content because it is several hours long. Tell us how all this came about.
Yeah, so I am very involved in dance, and I was at a dance class, and my friend Tom said, "Hey, have you ever heard of Peter Attia?" And I said, "Yeah, I know of him, but I have not heard his podcast or anything." As well, I was just curious because he talked a lot about cholesterol and lipoproteins, and I was listening in, and it seemed very interesting, but I wanted to know your take. And I've talked to my friends about different aspects of nutrition and health, so he just wanted my take on that series. I went and found it and just started listening in the background, but I mean, almost from the start I was like, what did he say? Rewind, rewind. Like, did I hear that right? And then, or sometimes I'd be like, wait, you know rewind, rewind. I'm not sure, did he just say that? And I did it so many times, right? And at the same time, a lot of other people came out of the woodwork and started asking me, "What do you think of this series?" And that's when I started to think about making it into an episode, because I was just going to do it and talk to my friend. The reason I made that decision was, wow, so many people have asked, right? That means that they've all listened to it and they have questions, or they just want to know, should we take this seriously, right? So it's worth actually investing some time listening to the series and kind of putting forth all the bits that didn't add up for me. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how that came about.
That's great. As you were listening to it, obviously you were making notes and wanting clarification and some things. I love that you used the term fuzzy. Things were a little bit fuzzy. That didn't quite click or it wasn't quite clear enough, which you provided tons of clarification in your podcast. But as you were listening to it, what were your favorite parts? What did you like about listening to this?
Um, I don't know if there were favorite parts because I think I was trying to take in the fact that that there were so many fundamental mistakes, right, that have been put forth. And and at the same time, these were two very distinguished gentlemen who were very involved in education and so forth. And I think, the whole time trying to sort that out in my head. Okay. And we often, you know, we talk about how there's not a lot of good credible information out there in science, but then we come to associate certain people with more credibility than others, and we give them more trust, more of our trust than others, right? And so in our heads, a lot of times we form a group of people that we inherently trust more, and then one group that maybe, we question a bit more, right? And these two have all the qualifications to put them in the high trust category. And as you mentioned earlier, they've done a lot, and obviously they've done a lot of good things and given out a lot of good information as well. But when it came to the world of cholesterol, and especially with their stated intention of raising this to the level of, let's say, a lipid fellowship, so they were really raising the stakes there, and they wanted to kind of push the academic limits of this, right? Then when you listen to it and you realize all the basic academic principles are kind of really off, that for me, I was just always trying to come to terms with that, right? So when, for example, at one point he talked about how all cells make cholesterol and you don't have to worry about delivering cholesterol. And he talked about you would only have to worry about it if the synthesis was broken. So this, listening to that just kind of made me realize how his thinking went off track, right? Because if you're thinking, well, you don't need to bring cholesterol in unless the synthesis is broken, tells you this person has separated two processes. There is the synthetic pathway, and then bringing in cholesterol, and they're separate and they're not related, right? And you can call on each one as needed, which isn't how it works. So listening to how they phrase something, how he phrases something, how he's thinking through something was interesting to me. It wasn't just finding, the inconsistencies or the inaccuracies. For me, because I am very interested in education, what interests me the most is looking at someone's thinking pattern and identifying where the thinking went off track, right? That's more useful to the person than, oh, you got this wrong, you got that wrong, right?